Hi, my name is Mark. I'm 38 years old and I work as a police officer in Chicago. Today I want to tell you a very personal and difficult story for me. A story about how one wrong step can cross out your entire life, destroy everything you've been building for so long and so hard. This is the story of my fatal mistake that threatens to destroy my family, career, and myself. Perhaps my bitter experience will save someone from similar recklessness. My wife Sarah and I met 15 years ago at a rock concert. I had just graduated from the police academy and proudly wore a cop badge. Sarah was studying to be a social worker and worked part-time at a homeless shelter. We immediately liked each other. Similar tastes in music, similar views on life, crazy chemistry between us. After 6 months of a whirlwind romance, I proposed to Sarah. At first, our marriage was perfect. We were both doing what we loved, building careers. At the same time, we always found time for each other. We regularly went out into nature, to the cinema, to concerts. On weekends, we lounged in bed until late, watched silly comedies, and talked about everything. We felt so easy and good together that it seemed it would always be like this. 3 years after the wedding, our son Tommy was born, and 2 years later, our daughter Lizzie. Wonderful, healthy babies, a real gift of fate. But with the appearance of children, the first difficulties crept into our family life. Sarah almost completely switched to the role of mother. Her whole world narrowed to diapers, baby food, and trips to doctors. I was out all day at work, investigating another high-profile case. There was almost no free time left. In the evenings, we were both literally falling from exhaustion. Everyone was immersed in their own problems and concerns. Somewhere the heart-to-heart conversations, fooling around and hugs before bed disappeared. We began to talk less, more often got irritated over trifles. Intimate life also gradually came to naught. I won't say that our marriage was cracking at the seams, but the former warmth and understanding in it had clearly diminished. It was especially difficult when Sarah was appointed head of department in social services. On the one hand, I was happy for her success and proud of my wife's purposefulness. But on the other hand, it meant even more irregular work, endless meetings and tons of paperwork. Sarah began to stay late almost every day, or even take work home. She simply had no energy or time left for me and the children. Once we had a big scandal. I reproached Sarah that she wasn't interested in the family at all, that the children were growing up without maternal attention. In response, she accused me of selfishness and ingratitude, saying that I, like no one else, should understand the specifics of responsible work. We said a lot of nasty things to each other. It almost came to handcuffs. After that quarrel, it was as if a black cat ran between us. A week later, apparently tired of the tense atmosphere in the house, Sarah suggested asking her mother to live with us for some time, to help with everyday life and look after the children. I didn't object. I always got along well with my mother-in-law, Patricia. Even at the wedding, she hugged me and said that she couldn't wish for a better husband for her daughter. And then she often stayed with us, helped with the babies, and just chatted about life. Patricia quickly put our mess in order. She took over all the cooking, laundry, cleaning. In the evenings, she spent time with the children, reading books, playing educational games. She even found time to go to the store for groceries or to the laundromat with me. Thanks to her efforts, the atmosphere became much calmer and friendlier, as if someone had opened a window and let fresh air into a stuffy house. My mother-in-law and I often talked in the evenings over a cup of tea. We shared the latest news, discussed children, remembered funny stories from the past. It was very easy to communicate with Patricia. She knew how to support a conversation on any topic, joke subtly, give good advice. Next to her, I felt relaxed and comfortable. I could be myself. Not like with Sarah lately. Patricia herself, despite her elegant age, remained a very attractive woman. Medium height, with a chiseled figure, thick chestnut hair and radiant brown eyes. Fashionable clothes, light makeup, exquisite jewelry. She didn't allow herself to relax. And in her every movement, gesture, gaze, grace and inner strength shone through. Perhaps in her 50s, my mother-in-law looked much more effective than many young girls. At first, I treated Patricia purely as a relative. I was grateful for her help, respected her wisdom and tact, valued our heart-to-heart conversations. But gradually, these feelings began to take on a completely different shade. More and more often, I caught myself admiring my mother-in-law in a manly way. I followed her chiseled figure with my eyes, got stuck on the dimples on her cheeks, inhaled the subtle aroma of her perfume. Quite inappropriate fantasies and desires began to flash in my head. One day, when we were preparing dinner, my hand accidentally came into contact with her palm. This innocent touch burned like an electric shock. Patricia flinched and raised a surprised look at me. A strange expression flashed in her eyes for a moment, a mixture of embarrassment, curiosity, and hidden expectation, as if she felt the same spark and was now waiting for my reaction. The tension between us became almost palpable. That same night, Patricia first appeared to me in an embarrassingly frank dream. We were indulging in mad passion, not thinking about anything. Her body writhed beneath me, her lips whispered frantic confessions. My mind was clouded with lust, my blood was boiling and frothing. The awakening was sharp and painful, as if I had been doused with ice water. From shame and confusion, I wanted to fall through the ground. From that day on, lustful thoughts about Patricia never left my head. I tried to drive them away, shamed myself, reminded myself of my duty to the family. But as soon as my mother-in-law was near, lust clouded my mind. Our accidental touches and ambiguous jokes became more frequent. It seems I wasn't the only one feeling this exciting tension. In Patricia's glances, mischief and the promise of something forbidden increasingly flashed. The apogee of this madness was the ill-fated picnic in nature. One weekend, we decided to go to the park with the children. Sarah was supposed to join us after some unscheduled meeting. We spread a blanket on the lawn, set out food, began to play with the kids. The day turned out to be unusually sunny and cloudless. Everyone was in a wonderful mood. At some point, Patricia took the children to the fountain. I, drowsy from the midday heat, lay down on the blanket and dozed off. I don't know how long I slept, but I woke up to the sensation of something cool and moist on my face. Opening my eyes, I saw Patricia leaning over me. She was carefully wiping my forehead with a handkerchief, humming some soothing melody. Her face was so close that I could see every wrinkle and every spark in her bottomless brown eyes. Suddenly, all rational arguments evaporated like dew under the scorching sun. Only a burning, unbearable desire remained. Without remembering myself, I pulled Patricia to me and dug into her lips with a greedy kiss. She froze for a moment, but then responded with no less fervor. We kissed fervently and selflessly, pouring all our accumulated passion into this kiss. Blood pounded in my temples. My heart was ready to jump out of my chest. I don't know how all this would have ended if we hadn't come to our senses from children's voices. Tommy and Lizzie were returning to our place, cheerfully chirping about something. We sprang apart as if scalded with boiling water, began to frantically straighten our clothes. Fortunately, the kids didn't notice anything, engrossed in conversation. But on each other's faces, we read a whole range of feelings: disbelief, shame, confusion, desperate thirst for continuation. That evening, after putting the children to bed, Patricia and I retired to the kitchen. There was a ringing silence in the house. Sarah called and warned that she would be delayed until morning. There was a force majeure at work. We sat opposite, not daring to raise our eyes, silently sipping cold coffee. I couldn't stand it first. I took Patricia's hand, looked her straight in the eye, and whispered, "What are we doing? How to understand this?" Her hand trembled in my palm. A whole storm of emotions flashed across her face, and the next moment Patricia herself reached for me and clung to my lips. The kiss turned out bitter salty from unshed tears. We kissed selflessly and desperately like two beasts starved for affection. Hands wandered over bodies, crumpling clothes, caressing skin yearning for touch. Blood hummed and pulsed in my temples, covering my vision with a crimson haze, and the lower abdomen was twisted into a tight knot of lust. At some point we found ourselves in bed, losing track of time and common sense. Clothes slid and fell off like unnecessary peel, exposing bodies yearning for caress. We intertwined in embraces, dissolving into each other without a trace. All thoughts evaporated, only an irresistible desire to become one whole remained. This intimacy was like an all-consuming sacred fire, resurrecting from the ashes, giving new life. Later, lying in Patricia's arms and listening to her measured breathing, I feverishly pondered what had happened. A whole cocktail of contradictory feelings was boiling inside. triumph from the experienced ecstasy, shame and guilt before my wife and children, despair from the irreparability of what was done, and at the same time an unbearable desire to repeat the madness of this night. To taste the forbidden fruit again, to drink the life-giving nectar. For several days, we carefully avoided any talk about what had happened. We behaved emphatically restrained and polite, as if strangers. At accidental touches, we jerked our hands away as if from red-hot iron. But the eyes, these mirrors of the soul, spoke more eloquently than any words. A whole range of emotions splashed in them: guilt, confusion, longing, and hidden hunger. We tried not to be alone, afraid of not coping with temptation. But as you know, you can't run away from yourself. The next few weeks merged into one feverish whirlpool of secret meetings and reckless actions. As soon as Sarah was delayed at work or left the house, we pounced on each other like starving beasts. We kissed greedily, feverishly tore off clothes, not remembering ourselves from lust. It seemed that even the air sparkled with tension, from the mutual desire to merge into one whole. At first, conscience gnawed mercilessly. After each intimacy, waves of repentance and bitterness rolled over. I felt like the last scoundrel who had betrayed the sacred bonds of marriage. Looking into the children's eyes, I felt as if an invisible brand of infidelity was eating into my skin. From shame and contempt for myself, I wanted to howl like a wounded wolf. But as soon as I saw Patricia again, all good thoughts evaporated like smoke. With her, I felt like a completely different person, strong, confident, desired. She looked at me not as an exemplary family man and breadwinner, but as a man in the most primitive, brutal sense of the word. Her caresses, words, touches awakened completely new, unfamiliar facets and impulses in me. Next to her, I wanted to do crazy things, move mountains, breathe deeply. Our meetings became more and more risky and daring. In the guest bedroom in broad daylight while the children were watching cartoons. In the car near the supermarket, risking being noticed. And once, on the roof of our house, under the cover of night, to the accompaniment of horns and sirens of the night city. Adrenaline and a sense of forbiddenness only spurred passion, forcing us to go on bigger adventures. Sarah seemed to notice nothing, completely immersed in work, detached, always tired. Her attention was completely captured by endless reports, meetings, and negotiations. Only crumbs of strength and emotions were left for me and the children, miserable leftovers. Sometimes it even seemed to me that my wife didn't care what I was doing and who I was spending time with. She was satisfied that the house was clean, the children were well groomed and fed. The rest could be ignored. But as you know, no matter how long the rope twists, there will still be an end. Our affair was uncovered in the most ridiculous and prosaic way. One night, when Patricia and I were selflessly making love in the guest bedroom, Sarah unexpectedly returned home. Her meeting was suddenly canceled, and deciding to make a surprise, she didn't call in advance. When the door to the room flung open, we didn't even immediately understand what was happening. Just at some point, we felt someone's shocked gaze on us. We turned around and went cold with horror. Sarah was standing on the threshold with a face distorted by shock and a bag of groceries in her hands. There was such torment and resentment in her eyes that I was momentarily blinded. I wanted to fall through the ground, just not to see this heartbreaking picture. For a few seconds, there was a ringing silence in the room, and then thunder struck. Coming to her senses, Sarah burst into such sobs and curses that the walls shook. She screamed that we were dirty animals, scum not worthy to live, that we destroyed the family, betrayed her and the children in the most vile way. She threw pillows, things, everything that came to hand at us. It got to the point where I had to restrain my wife to prevent her from hurting herself. I will never forget that night and all the subsequent nightmare. Sarah's threats to divorce and deprive me of fatherhood. Her fits, breakdowns, hysterics, tears and bewilderment of children, frightened by parents' quarrels. A mute plea for forgiveness in Patricia's eyes, hastily packing her things. Shame and contempt of neighbors who heard our fights perfectly through thin walls. I felt dirty, crushed, destroyed. The following months turned into a torture lasting an eternity. A walk through hell, with no hope of salvation. My wife didn't want to see or hear me. She filed for divorce, hired a lawyer, and started the divorce process. She tried to turn the children against me, but they loved their dad and couldn't understand why Mom was behaving so cruelly. My own family turned away from me, not wanting to disgrace themselves. Only my partner Dave supported me, and even he called me a fucking dog behind my back. Gradually, rumors about Sarah's and my prospects at work began to reach me. They sympathized with her and guaranteed promotion, since the management was aware of family circumstances. About me, they whispered that there was no place for cheaters in the force, that serious plans couldn't be built on me. It's amazing how I still held on to my position with such an indelible stigma, although the management became noticeably colder and more detached. Patricia left to relatives in another state. Immediately after the scandal, she packed her things and secretly left our house. No note, no explanations. Only a short message with apologies to her daughter and grandchildren. I missed her like an amputated limb. Despite all the shame and pain, I couldn't forget our meetings, conversations, caresses. Knowing that I would never be able to touch her again, feel the warmth and tenderness of her body. I wanted to catch up with her, beg for forgiveness, to beg for one more chance, demanding nothing in return. But that would be too vile towards Sarah. My wife didn't kick me out of the house for the sake of the children. I returned to the marital bedroom, but we slept on different edges of the bed. Two strangers, ironically sharing a bed. In the mornings I left for work before dawn and returned after dark. Sarah was hardly ever at home, disappearing either at the office or at friends. All our communication was reduced to cold greetings and discussion of household matters. We no longer talked about the infidelity. We were afraid to stir up wounds that wouldn't heal. The children, my poor boys, were caught between two fires. On the one hand, they loved and pitied Mom, not understanding what Dad had done wrong to her. On the other hand, they were drawn to me, missed my attention and care. That's who I brought pain to with my irresponsible actions. I still remember Tommy's confused look. "Dad, don't you love us at all now? Will you leave forever, like Uncle Billy left Aunt Liz?" How to explain to an 8-year-old child that his father is the last scoundrel and traitor? My throat tightened with shame and remorse. One morning I couldn't stand it and got down on my knees before Sarah. I sobbed, begged for forgiveness, swore to make amends. I said that I loved her and the children more than life, that I was ready for anything for one more chance. My wife listened to my penitential outpourings, biting her lips. Her jaw muscles were working, and there was such pain in her eyes that I wanted to howl. Finally, she raised her hand, stopping my verbal flow, and quietly, hoarsely said, "I'll give you one last chance, not for us, but for the children. And if even one bitch dares to make eyes at you, I'll throw you out on the street without pants. Now get out of my sight, traitor." Since then, my life has turned into a continuous atonement for sins. I tackled household chores with triple zeal, helping my wife around the house. I tried to spend more time with the children, taking them to school, to clubs, helping with homework. At work, I worked like a madman, overfulfilling plans, taking overtime and night shifts. I vowed that I would never again allow myself even a hint of flirting with the opposite sex. In short, I was bending over backwards to prove to Sarah the seriousness of my intentions. At first, my wife took my efforts skeptically. She clearly expected a trick, a new betrayal. But gradually, the ice in our relationship began to melt a little. Sarah no longer shied away from my touches, calmly listened to stories about work. She even began to joke and smile, like before. And one night she herself reached out to me with a kiss, timid, barely perceptible. My heart leapt with suddenly overwhelming happiness. Now, a year after the ill-fated adultery, I'm still dealing with the consequences of my misconduct. Pain, resentment, distrust haven't gone anywhere. They're lurking somewhere in the back of the soul. They slip through now and then in a casual glance, a fleeting gesture, a slip of the tongue. Our marriage will never be the same. Too much has happened. The wounds are too deep. But we're both trying, learning to live anew, for ourselves and our children. The affair with my mother-in-law became a terrible lesson for me, showed how easy it is to destroy what you've been building for years. One wrong move, and pain and disappointment settle in the souls of loved ones. And it's oh so difficult to beg for forgiveness. It can take years and years. And there are no guarantees that they will believe you, give you another chance. Therefore, if you're destined to go through such a trial, don't delay, don't aggravate the situation. Immediately break the connection at the root. Get on your knees before your loved ones. Otherwise, the risk of losing everything becomes too high. And one more thing. No matter how family life develops, whatever difficulties and disappointments befall you, appreciate what you have. Don't take your loved ones for granted. Prove your love and devotion to them every day. Find time for communication. Don't be shy to talk about your feelings. Yes, routine, misunderstanding, quarrels are inevitable, but this is not a reason to seek comfort on the side. Sit down, discuss problems, look for a way out together. And remember, your family is the most precious thing you have. To betray it is the same as betraying yourself. Let my confession serve as a warning to you, dear friends. Believe me, a few months of euphoria and passion are not worth a destroyed family, crippled fates of children, contempt of loved ones. No matter how tempting the forbidden fruit, no matter how the veil of mystery tickles your nerves, it's not worth it. Find the strength to resist temptation, to direct your love and tenderness to those who truly love and wait for you. And then you will be able to carry your marital happiness through many years and trials. Take care of your families. Did you like this story? Let us know in the comments what you liked. Subscribe to our storytelling podcast. Also, don't forget to like and ring the bell so you don't miss more interesting stories. See you soon.